So, welcome all this afternoon. Our next session is the rise and impact of tenant experience platforms in Africa. It is moderated by Sean Godoy, the co-founder of PropTech Africa, who's based in South Africa. And he is joining him in conversation is Ben Shaw, CEO of HouseMe, Jill Sperling, CEO of Flow, and Alexandra Proctor, CEO of Digs Connect. Sean, thank you for moderating, and good luck to the panel, and thank you for your time today. Cheers, guys.
Thank you, Murray. Yes, welcome to our esteemed speakers, Alexandra and Jill. I believe if Ben will be joining us, or he may have an issue, but we're going to get started. So just to start, if I could ask you guys just for a quick intro about your journey and how you came to be involved in your respective companies. Alexandra, if you want to kick us off, please.
Yeah, definitely. Going alphabetically, I suppose. So Digs Connect kind of started as me trying to just build a solution to the problem I was facing, right in front of me. When I was a student at UCT doing my undergrad, I'm originally from the Eastern Cape, so I'm not from Cape Town. I went to UCT, and luckily I was in res in my first year. But after that, it was a problem that I was facing. How do you find student accommodation? Because student accommodation is very different to normal housing. Like, you want to be, your whole life kind of revolves around the campus. So you want to be very close to campus. You are very budget constrained, so you want to make sure you're in a place you can afford. The student lifestyle is, it's very different to like the lifestyle that, an adult would have. And so to find like a cool place with other students was like, it's quite a niche need, and nothing really caters to that, So I really struggled myself. And, my friends all spoke about how much they struggled, but I never knew what a big issue was until I was elected into the SRC. And then when I was the Student Representative Council, my portfolio actually was student housing. So suddenly I realized that this issue of student housing was like way bigger than just me and a couple of friends. It was like, the entire university, the vast majority of which weren't housed by university residences. So to cut, quite a long story short, basically I built Digs Connect as this website just to solve a problem I was facing right in front of me, that students, my peers and everyone else working the Student Representative Council were looking for a place to stay, and landlords in the private sector had stepped to the plate and had these rooms that just weren't connecting. So it really was just about fixing a problem right in front of my face, which then grew into what it is now.
Thank you. It's interesting. It shows you, the established investor development market, was providing student housing, but there's always a place for products around that, and that's what's so exciting about this topic. Just as from my side, is obviously sales and letting platforms globally. It's responsible for a lot of activity within the PropTech innovation space. Mainly due to need for efficiencies, improvement in efficiencies, and also the volume of transactions. So I'm sure Jill and Ben will also have some interesting insights there. But Jill, just a very short to your journey and how it got you to Flow, please.
Yeah, thanks, Sean. It's pronounced Gil.
Gil, sorry.
No, all good, all good. So yeah, I when I was about 10 or 12 years ago now, we started our first business, which was it was an ad tech business. We wrote some tech that integrates to Facebook, and I got to know and understand engagement, following Facebook's journey very, very closely, right from the early stage. And ultimately, we built, a really good business that delivers value to big brands by understanding that level of engagement. You'll see in a minute why even that background is relevant. And once we sold that business and we were moving on, we realized that, there's the value that we managed to create, and the understanding of how people had engaged, where they're spending most of their time, and where the deficit is in terms of people and even basic human needs like housing. We realize that property is one of the least innovated on sectors and has a tremendous amount of value that can be unlocked for people. And together with that, we also learned about generation rent, which is people who are renting for longer because of two main reasons. One, the inaffordability to buy, just generally because the inflation of housing has really overtaken the inflation of earnings. And but also there's, I'm not sure which one's which, but the choice of lifestyle and people settling down later, and people people choosing to be more transient and you know, valuing experiences over assets, and so there's a change in how people are behaving, and they're renting for longer. And together with our knowledge and understanding of how people engage with brands, engage with products in their life, and with businesses in their life, and with you know, it's really property was lagging. And the crazy thing is that property in your home is the most significant transaction for a tenant every month. Not only because it's 20 to 30% of their income, but it's where you live and it's your home. And so with all of these facts, we quickly understood that there's a massive opportunity to find or to build a platform that unlocks this value for tenants in a way that it also benefits the whole ecosystem. And so that's when we built Flow, and we launched it early last year as a platform, was an app for tenants, and they use it to do their rental activities. They pay their rent on the app. They look after their place. They complete surveys. They renew their lease on the app, and by doing so and doing so timeously, they earn points, they go up levels, and they unlock rewards and deals at partners that we put together that are, again, relevant to their rental experiences. And those would be subscriptions and security subscriptions and insurance products and groceries and everything that's really related to your home. Tenants were now able to get value back into their pocket and by leveraging their largest transaction every month. And that in turn contributed to the whole ecosystem, because landlords and agencies would receive the value of that because it incentivizes their tenant to behave better. And in turn, the landlord and agent could once they get a more profitable business, they could also the value would actually go back to the tenant through this better relationships that builds, through this retention that's created, and so it's really a win-win benefit between the players of the ecosystem, and that led us to kind of the full end-to-end vision, which is when we rolled up search and the ability for a tenant and landlord to find each other. So once we had built out this base of this demand of tenants who are working to get who have quite a rich profile and flow, we also had the ability to better match a tenant and a landlord, and that's really the largest part of our journey and the business that we've got some good traction on today.
Fantastic. Thank you, Jill. It's Gil. Sorry. My mistake. Yeah, thank you very much. It's really interesting to hear, the rental market in most cities and countries is massive, and there's a lot of room for increased efficiencies and also increased product development for renters and landlords, which you guys have demonstrated. It's kind of like I don't know if you don't like the description, but like the vitality of renting, which I think makes a lot of sense because it's a huge expense for people. So I think it's quite cool. So thank you for that.
Cool. We actually often use that analogy. I think it's right because it's something that resonates with people. We didn't invent shared value. We didn't invent that concept. It's really working in many other industries, and we've brought it to this, and it certainly is unlocking value back for the participants.
Yeah, no, 100%. Yeah, and Vitality has been successful globally, so it just shows you it's a really cool South African innovation, I think, in a lot of ways. Yeah, so on that point, obviously we have 3 South African startups here, but there's a lot of similar sales and letting platforms in Africa that I've come across in my research and my travels. So really fantastic. Just to obviously give a nod to them, and there's a lot happening. But obviously, the startups here have really achieved success, and I think sort of fine-tuned what they're doing. So House Me is one of those. So it takes us on to Ben Shaw. Thanks for joining us, Ben. So if I could just ask you to do just a brief intro to your journey, how it brought you to House Me, and then just a quick summary of what House Me actually does.
Sure. So my name is Ben. My background is investment banking, so very non-startup. Biggest bank in the world, JP Morgan, was investment banking there for a while. Started a whole bunch of things, failed a whole bunch of times, and Houseway is my first sort of full-time startup. That was 5 years ago. We started it, and the thinking at that point in time was, could we better price match between tenants and landlords? And that was the only problem we were looking to solve. You can see the banking coming out, getting used to market clearing pricing in shares. The same concept to auction off rentals was really the very genesis of House Me. And that's a tool we still have today. It's now called the Place Me tool. But that was the first problem we tried to solve. How does a tenant and a landlord know what a fair price is? Typically they don't, the agent doesn't either. So how do we do that? And from there we evolved to understand more of the problems that happen in the rental market. So we didn't have as if I could say as creative a concept as sort of a loyalty program or a rewards program. I think we really just tried to work out what was the worst part of the experience up front and try to solve that, and then what was the next worst part. And so as a result, what we've done is build an end-to-end B2C matching not necessarily tenants to properties. We're not a search and discovery marketplace at all, but matching services to landlords who don't want to pay an agent's fee, or indeed agencies who don't want to manage parts of their book. So we plug into marketplaces, and we then provide rental management services, all of the dirty work in payment collection, lease management, dispute management. We offer a rental guarantee. We've got a whole bunch of risk mitigant products, a rental guarantee, deposit-free renting, things that we can do because we own that process. And we then look to partner with marketplaces who find tenants on market properties that have been registered. What does House Me summarize that now? We're, as I say, we're a B2C platform. We've built end-to-end software that assists in taking users either on the tenant or the landlord side through a lease end-to-end, and we're able to sort of scale that for portfolios as large as 1,000 or as small as one, and we've got clients like that across the country.
Fantastic. Sorry, just taking a pic for the social medias. But yeah, fantastic. I think what's interesting is, all three of your company startups, play in the rental space. So it just shows you there's the real estate value chain from, design to building to management, etc. But even within, renting and sales, there's a value chain, and there's room for so much innovation. So it's great to see your successes demonstrating, there's a place for a lot of players, and there's a lot of places to enter. So that's fantastic. So thank you, Ben. So let's move on to our first question. So we'll go alphabetically, like Alexandra mentioned, just to keep it all PC, and there's no favorism here. So first question is, why do you think sales and letting platforms have achieved success in the residential market in South Africa?
I think it's because, I think Gil touched on it earlier, there hasn't been much innovation in the space. I mean, housing is one of the most basic, essential, fundamental aspects of a human's life, where you live. And we've been using the same kind of methodology for a really long time. And then we had this there's information age and this explosion of really cool technology, and all these ways that our lives have been improved through technology. And I think especially with our generation, millennials, Gen Zs, we're just used to things being easy and convenient and just fun and cool. And leasing isn't cool. It's horrible. It's a dreadful experience how it currently existed. So the possibility to make it better, to leverage these really cool new tools we have through technology, and through just making things more efficient. I think it was just so ripe to be disrupted. It was so ready for a better alternative. And I think that people are used to having options now. And as soon as you have an option that's better than something that's bad, people will flock to that. And I think especially in South Africa, where people are quite frustrated with bad service. You give someone really good service and say I'm actually building something customer first, using the startup lean startup methodology to really be like, how can I delight my end user to feel like I'm really like fulfilling this need? It's exciting. It's just like it's offering a better alternative to something that just was like a bit lame. And especially, I mean, for
So just to jump in the customer experience, I lived in London for 4 years, and just to take the restaurant experience, I think our service levels in South Africa trump the London like big time. So I think we're good at customer service, and it probably shows why you've been successful. So yeah, it's a really good point. Sorry.
Yeah, no, I was thinking more kind of terms of like I don't know, I think because we think from such a student perspective, being a student platform, but like, when you apply to university, like the admin there is just like, it's dreadful back and forth. So like, and housing is kind of the part that everyone kind of expected, you expect this like painful, onerous experience where it's just like eye rolls, maybe like so much back and forth. So you kind of take that and make it easy, safe, and fun. It's a big part of our brand. I think it's because we're such a young brand, we speak to a young audience, is making it just like a fun, enjoyable experience. It's like, why can't it be like a few taps on your phone to get what you're looking for? And that's kind of been like our guiding methodology, is just like speaking to this generation. I mean, there's more millennials than boomers. So it's like speaking to that generation, being like, let's build for people. Let's not build for like, I don't really accept this current system just because of the way things are done. The current system sucks. Let's do something better. I think that's why it's been, why people are excited to adopt something new, because it's better.
Yeah, and that's what innovation is all about. You can't always accept the status quo. So you go in there and you disrupt things, and you make it interesting, and you spur on a whole wave of disruption, which is, you guys have probably done. If you look at the student housing market, I think it's quite exciting in South Africa. We've got some great developers and operators, and I'm sure what you've done is made them like pull up their socks, to use a non-Gen X phrase. But yeah, so thank you for that. Very, very useful. Ben, let's go alphabetically. So over to you. Why do you think, obviously you're in the rental space, why do you think there's success in general with rentals platforms?
Yeah, it's an interesting question because it depends on how you determine success or how you define it. I think certainly there's a huge movement towards it. And I think customer experience, as Alex has pointed out, is exactly right. I think there's just so much terrible experiences that you see anything remotely better and you're like, wow, it's life-changing. And I think that's what companies, and particularly brands, I think it's excellent. Really explain to people that it doesn't have to be a grudge. I mean, it's almost revolutionary to some of the older generations. So I think that's a big reason, but again, depends on how you determine success. South Africa isn't big enough of a market to really have success if you're comparing to global standards. We don't have the volume of or the market size really to expand to what a company in Europe or possibly the States would determine success at the stage and age that we're at. So I think where success is coming, or your question of why is it success? I think because the efficiencies in this market are seen as being beneficial. So people like to do things more efficiently, and you combine that with a better customer experience, they see that as success. Whether that is going to ever rival a success of a massive corporation, I mean, there's some prop tech companies that have taken over entire countries. 50-60% of rental is done by one company in some of these countries. I'm not sure. I don't know if Africa is ready for that level of, in inverted commas, success. So it depends on how you define it. But I would say, to add to Alex's point, so you've got the customer experience, you've also got the efficiency, and we often see that in terms of pricing. I guess that's been Housme's sort of mantra over the last few years, that let's pass on the cost saving that tech can bring direct to the consumer.
Thank you. Really, really important. I think addressing those kind of snags and challenges, and people expecting the convenience they see in other parts of the life. So, Gil, moving on to you.
Yeah, so I mean, I really think what I'm about to say has been touched on. It's really about. I mean, it's almost a necessity, actually. Gen Z and millennials, every other sector, every other product that we engage with, we expect a certain engagement and a certain interface. We expect more instantaneous results, more more access to information, more transparency, more visibility. So it's become a necessity for sectors that are lagging to actually get up to speed. And so that's that's really pulled through the property sector. And if there is any innovation happening in the space, it's embraced very quickly because it's people are hungry for it. So and that's really been our experience as well. Is as the minute that you're able to empower people to demonstrate the value, to give them an instant experience, a delightful experience, like Alex said, it makes a massive difference, and the adoption is far quicker, it's far easier. So but the bottom line is that I don't think it's people. It's not a nice to have. Actually, I really do think it's a necessity, and that's what's driving the movement quite quickly.
Fantastic. Thank you for those great insights. It is going to become the new norm, which brings me on to our next question. I just wanted to ask what your thoughts are where the residential market is heading in terms of sales and letting. So, structurally and practically how these things are done. Obviously, your companies have changed the way things are done. But, companies like Ben said, taking over a large portion of the market share. Do you see traditional players embracing technology? And importantly, because I feel there's always a human touch involved in property, is where do agents and brokers fit in? Which is, there's a lot of talk about cutting out the middleman, etc. But I think property will always have a place for that face-to-face. So Alexandra, if I could ask you to jump in there.
Sales and letting, it's interesting. So we're very niche. And I always draw me back to our experience. We focus on young people, like very young, 18, 19, 20, 21, that are going to university. And so much of our vision is around that educational journey. There's 2.3 million students in South Africa. We are deeply committed to the necessity to get more graduates into the South African economy. We need as many graduates in our economy, paying taxes, supporting their communities. I think data shows that for every graduate that comes from a low-income background, they support 5 family members up and sending them to university, breaking those poverty cycles. So for us, so much about this is how can we just find homes that are conducive to academic pursuits for these students. And what we found through the property sector in South Africa, why it's so exciting, is that South Africans are so naturally entrepreneurial. And when a problem arises, people we hustle, we make a plan. And that's happened in, in the student housing sector, in that the universities house a tiny proportion of students across South Africa. A tiny proportion. Look at UCT as an example, 30,000 students, 5,000 beds in residence. And that's the same story across the country. And, there was this big cry, in the newspaper, in the news sources every year saying that, universities should build more housing. And I couldn't disagree more. I think that universities, your core purpose is to teach and to do research. Housing, as everyone here will know, from property backgrounds, it's very specific, especially housing students, in large residence scale properties or digses. It has its own specific needs, kind of cater to that, do it well, and make sure that you're doing it with economics that kind of make viable sense. If you have a mortgage to pay off, if you have your raising taxes, you have expenses, it has to kind of make sense to that. And I think what I found so incredible about the property sector of student housing is that normal, plucky, entrepreneurial South Africans have kind of risen up, realized there was a need, and accommodated for that. This idea of the digs. I think my dad stayed in digs when he was studying, Pretoria, or my uncle. It's just it's this thing that our parents and their parents got it was accepted. We did it, but kind of we hadn't really helped those landlords kind of get into the market they needed, because it's it's very niche. You're looking for, you're cohabiting, you're sharing that space. And the social experience of students wanting to stay with students, and your life is centered around this campus. So I think in terms of our sector specifically with student housing, the future of that, I think it's about working closer with the education departments and being how can we facilitate this educational journey to get as many students as we possibly can through the finish line. Only 1 in 3 government-funded students actually graduate. And that's insane. You're investing so much, and not only in terms of investing taxpayers' money in student education, but we're also we're investing in what this person can bring to the country, what their future potential would be, future earnings, and again their tax-paying citizenry, what that means to us. And every time they drop out, we lose that potential. And the reason people drop out is complicated, sure, but I mean, like, when I went around the country looking at different student accommodation, I mean, I was appalled at some of the things I saw. I mean, some of the buildings I refused to actually go inside. I was like, how can people live here, let alone try and like study here, especially coming from home? Often the first in their families to go to, university in a language they don't really, it's a second, third language for them. So I think we really need to work closely with, the bursaries for the students and with the education departments, and then with these like incredible landlords who have invested in our country, bought houses, who want to house students, who have these fantastic homes, but just can't access them. And that's where things like, NSFAS, which is the National Student Financial Aid Scheme, is government-funded student funding. They created these norms and standards for student housing, which are, I can't even get started on them because I'll talk for hours, but we actually released a report available on our website looking at detail that we critique the norms and standards, exactly what they were and why they're so exclusionary and why so many landlords were excluded from being included in these definitions. Some of them were absurd. Like, you had to have a volleyball-sized area of land. I mean, you talk about in Central Braamfontein or in Claremont, you're going to have a volleyball court, and how is that applicable to student housing?
It's a good point, disconnect between public sector. And, again, it's where, new companies like you guys can come in and address the situation. I'm just going to, excuse me, I'm going to jump in there because we're just going to be wary of time. But you raise great points, and there's a whole conversation about seeing students through the education system. And it's not just about paying for their studies. So like in mentorship, and then also housing is so crucial. Students, and then, children growing up, this is the problem. We have vast amounts of in South Africa and Africa, people living in substandard housing, and it puts them at a massive disadvantage because you can't study properly if you're not warm and there's lighting. So that's quite interesting, and technology has a part to play. So yeah, thanks for that's a very very much a big topic on its own, but thank you for that. Ben, your views in terms of sales, letting, future of the market, also structurally, and then brokers and agents. How do you think this will work? My view sometimes is hybrid. Maybe traditional will adopt technology, and then there's players probably like yourselves who offer like a full tech, a full digital experience, and there's room for hybrid, traditional, and tech. But obviously your comments would be very interesting.
Yeah, so I think I won't address it in such a nuance, and so maybe my comments will be more general and not applicable, across the industry. But I think we've got to sort of look forward and say, well, where's up? And I think we can all agree that one way or another, every single property practitioner, everyone who's involved in the value chain of sales, rental, letting, whatever it may be, is going to be tech enabled. And then it's really just a question of us defining what that enabling is for each player. I think that no one would disagree that the tech has a major part to play in providing the efficiency and in providing some level of disintermediation. A good example of that is the fact that we have payment rails like PayProp or PropWorks. No one doubts their value. Everyone uses them as a back-end system. If you're an agent, you're not going to handle payments through your own bank account as an EFT. So there are some pieces of tech that have really been adopted in and have kind of taken off. I think the question that's more interesting there is, how do we fit in all the role players of today in that future? So what does a broker look like in 10 years? What is an agent doing with viewings? And I think that's a really difficult question. We're seeing some answers come out, particularly overseas, where you've got an infinite sort of pool of data available, and you're able to stream. And so therefore, you do 3D viewings, you walk in places, and you won't have to go into a building you've never seen before. You're fully aware of it. It's been scoped. You've got the ability to virtually walk through. You can go that way, and the constraint on that is typically data and processing power, which means in Africa we're going to be quite far behind that trend. The other thing to look at in terms of how you evaluate the market is, well, where's the locus of control going to be? Is it going to be landlord or tenant, or indeed the broker or the manager? And I think that that's maybe, if I could address my comments there, is probably what Housme has the most to say. We believe that the control will remain between those parties. We don't think it makes sense that one party sort of out-controls another. And we're seeing the impact of that actually happening now, where 5 years ago it was a landlord-dominated market. South Africa had more demand than supply. It meant that there was an overinflation on property prices, more developments took place, And now we're sitting with the reverse role, and the pendulum swung. Everyone has vacancies. We predicted about 12 months ago there's going to be a 30% decrease in rental pricing, between 10 and 30. COVID, of course, has made it in some cases even more than 30. But that actually, you can see statistically that was going to happen because of your supply demand. So where do brokers fit in? How does tech solve it? Tech needs to come in and to provide better data to the players in the industry. So it doesn't make sense that one company can have a view that would actually impact many and then not share it. And then brokers, agents, role players between, the intermediaries of the transaction, need to be better at assessing all of the inputs, offering advice, and then concierging services based on those needs. Sometimes they will be tech enabled. Sometimes it will be a relationship that you go and meet someone for coffee. I don't think anyone in the world has landed on the right combination yet. But our view of the future is a hybrid future where tech increasingly automates processes and people increasingly focus on the relationships to get jobs done. And I think that by doing so, we're going to see a drop in cost for users across the value chain. And then in South Africa, particularly, I expect in the next 3-4 years, a consolidation of companies where instead of just being a marketplace or just a service company or just an agency, we're going to see an end-to-end sort of ecosystem come out such that those data efficiencies can be shared.
Fantastic, thanks, Ben. A lot of interesting points mentioned there. Relationships are still key, and how this is your last point, end to end. It really does make a lot of sense in terms of what we're going to see going forward. And then people with traditional skills and experience, they have a valuable part to play in an end to end. So I think it's fantastic. So thank you for those points. We sort of running out of time, but Gil, if you could give us your insights, please, in a couple of minutes.
So I think it's good to actually have a look at some of the other sectors and the evolution that they went through. So the one advantage for property, being a laggard in adoption, is that you can actually take a look at what happened at other sectors. So if you take a look at the financial industry, financial brokers are still around, and if you look at travel agencies are still around. You look at the list goes on. You look at any service-based industry. At the end of the day, business and engagement, interaction between people is about people, and they will never go away. And it's really because of trust. So the one party, so let's focus on the financial sector. 10, 20 years ago, if I wanted to buy a share, it would be a very manual, very broken, very physical transaction to buy a share, right? And a broker would kind of have that as his advantage because he does it all day, every day. He does it at mass. He does it at scale. There's discounting, and there's all sorts of commerciality involved in being able to deliver that service to in a sense, a physical service of buying a share. But that process of buying a share got disintermediated, right? Not the broker, but the process. In that you don't have to. I mean, you and I can jump onto easy equities into our internet banking, into anywhere, and buy a share right now. But a lot of us still want a broker, and the main reason is because that broker has intimate knowledge, intimate insights, and does two things that Ben mentioned: is provide advice and provide a concierge of getting a transaction done from A to Z, even though the actual physical transaction is completely commoditized. And that, I believe, is the trend that will happen in property, is that agencies or an agent or someone that is, we have a certain definition of an agent, but be it whatever it will evolve to, there will always be an individual that day to day is in the industry, understands people, understands the network, understands the systems, and consumers will lean on them, and landlords as well will lean on an agent to help facilitate. So I do not believe that they will disappear at all, but like financial brokers, if we use that analogy, they will get disintermediated if they do not know how to use the systems. right? So a broker who doesn't know how to jump online and buy a share on behalf of his client cannot work today, and that is what I believe will happen in the property industry. So agencies and agents need to arm themselves and need to embrace and adopt technology, and a lot of them are intimidated because they've been doing it for most of their life. So and that's really what an adoption curve is all about. So that kind of gradual hump until the mass adopt it is a struggle because of people who are resisting that change, right? But I don't think they should resist it, because the minute that they can embrace and adopt it, they will benefit from it, because their value, people will ensure that their value will not disappear because they lean on their trust and their insight and their day-to-day hands-on involvement. So yes, I think to summarize, agents and agencies in a way, and also agencies have a very strong brand that represents that trust. And that brand has been built up over decades. And so they will and they should evolve technologically, but I don't believe that it's going to be easy to deteriorate the value of a brand, as long as they adopt and evolve. So again, to summarize, that's my view on the agents and agencies and technology. Again, like I said earlier, because it's becoming a necessity, because in every other sphere in our lives, we are already expecting instant gratification, instantly having access, transparency and visibility. We're all used to it, and we are going to start demanding that out of property, and technology is what enables that. And that's why I really see the way that we look, the way that we find, the way that we communicate. So the way that we find an apartment, the way that we communicate with the agent and the landlord, the way that we transact month to month on the payments is going to be on some sort of tech platform. And I don't think there's going to be any massive 180s on the way that we live. That those trends are more, like co-living, for example, co-living trends and the and fractional buying of properties, things that's happening with guys like Easy Properties and so on. That's coming. That's really big technology trends. But as consumers, I think we all, like we said, housing is a basic human need, and we're gonna be living in a house, and we're gonna be using the technology that fulfills the purpose that we used to and that we want to right now, instantly, and relying on trust and relying on the network to walk us through that.
Fantastic. Thank you, Gil. Those are some great points. I like the trust, the relationships, offering that concierge of services. I think points everyone's raised are crucial. And sometimes the more things change, the more they stay the same. So we've got to remember
exactly.
Housing is housing at the end of the day, and its importance and its role in people's lives and society is crucial. But there's ways things are changing that we do. But it's good to just acknowledge what you're dealing with. Try not to reinvent the wheel, I think, and just address a specific problem. But yeah, thanks. We've reached the end of our session, so thank you all very much. Gil, Alexandra, Ben, your insights have been fantastic. And Alexandra, I see you have a question from Tato from Move In Kenya. If you can maybe jump on the chat there. But yeah, thanks to you all, and wish you all the best and a great week ahead.
Thanks, guys. Likewise.
See you guys.
Thanks, John.
Yeah.
Ciao, guys. Bye.
Bye.